Hey everybody, it's Paul from Alexandria Knife Sharpening and Laser Engraving. It's been far too long since we just had a sit down and talk style podcast. I want to give you guys an update as to how 2025 ended, where I see things going in 2026 for my business. I wanted to just kind of fill you in on some things going on. I've made some changes, as you guys know, and I'm constantly changing, adding new things, doing different things in the shop. And let's get into it. Let's talk about some of this stuff. And first I want to talk about the audience and our followers here and kind of give you a little bit of a broad spectrum of who are the followers of this channel and who's really interested in knife sharpening, because it's going to help us go into one of the new things that I'm going to talk about here, which I think will be interesting to some of you guys. The followers of my channel, generally, we don't have a lot of very young people. So 18 through 25, not that big of a crowd. I do not draw from the very young YouTube crowd, which is kind of sad because I would hope we would get more like young entrepreneurial types, ones who want to learn a skill or a way that they can make money on the side. And I'll explain to you even why that kind of ties into something new that I'm doing here to support another small business. And it was kind of something I had avoided, but we'll get into that here in a few minutes. I also want to touch on this because of how it does affect the majority of the people that we do attract. So the very big following, if you look at the statistics that you can pull from YouTube where it shows, hey, this is the age category of your followers. A lot of my followers are even significantly older than me. So I'm 57 and I very much pull from like, I would say 60 all the way up into just below 80 range is the majority of my followers. So we have a lot of retirees or soon to be retired people. Now, being former law enforcement and former military, I get a lot of that. The military and law enforcement retire young. So we're always looking for something else to do unless you are going to go play golf every day. And I was never a golfer. So I always kind of knew like I had to do something to keep myself busy. I didn't want to just sit around and watch TV. That's kind of how I got into this kind of stuff, because this is what I've always loved. I've always loved working with my hands, tinkering with stuff, modifying things. And, what started out as knife sharpening went into knife sharpening and laser engraving. And now we got knife sharpening and laser engraving and 3D printing. And it's just, more and more stuff comes in as time goes on, but they're all things I'm enjoying. And I think that's a really important factor. So that's the one thing I wanted to touch on here, especially for my group from let's talk 50 through into your 70s and 80s. If you're looking for something else to do and you're going to add sharpening as a little side gig, and it's great. It's great. It's a great side gig that just about anybody can do, but be careful of kind of what happened to me, which is if it's really needed in your area and it's a really populated area and you're easy to get to, you might be amazed at how much business you have. Now, a lot of guys struggle with the complete opposite. Some people aren't getting any business, or maybe they live in a really rural area and it's not, the same type of situation. But I will warn many of you, if you do have a wide open market, managing the amount of work you want to be doing and keeping it enjoyable can be a challenge. It's been my biggest challenge. There's times where the only stress that I really get from this is sometimes I just feel like I'm way too busy, too many customers, too much stuff going on. And a decision that I made long ago was that I didn't want employees. And it's not because, not because I don't like people. It just wasn't something I wanted to deal with. I've had businesses where I've had employees before. And I've always had small businesses. I've never had a huge business. Every business I've ever had has been relatively small. But when I brought on an employee, it was because the work level had just gotten to where I couldn't manage it anymore. And you are opening yourself up to a whole new level of things when you start having employees. And that's an important thing to think about. If you're crazy busy, are you going to bring on an employee? They're not always reliable. Sometimes you get lucky. And I had some great employees. In the last business I had before I got into all this, I had one employee and she was fantastic. She did like all my shipping and things for me. And she was awesome. Stay-at-home mom, and was great. And I've thought about even doing that before, bringing on a person who, especially maybe even like temp work. My crazy time of year is always October through January 1st. I've thought about bringing a person in for, just to meet the people, get their knives, get the information, hand stuff back off to people. Because you guys have probably seen in videos, there's times, a lot of times I'll pause the camera, but I've shown it before where I've gone outside to get something. What you guys don't always see is sometimes it's nonstop. I have times, especially if it's lunchtime or dinner time, where I'll get interrupted time and time and time again, 4 or 5 times. A lot of my customers are repeats and they're great. And they know to like come up, put their stuff in the box, but I get a lot of new customers too. And they just, sometimes love to ring the bell and they have a question or they want to talk. And I don't mind doing that, but it's all just part of keeping in mind, like every little interruption. And you'll see even on my website, I make no bones about it. If you go look at my website, it says right in there, I have your knives anywhere from 3 to 5 days. If it hasn't been, that period of time, please don't text me. Every text message I have to answer takes time away from sharpening yours and everybody else's knives. And it might even sound a little rude, but it's just the truth. Like I can waste so much time just answering text messages. Now, should I bring someone on to do that kind of work? It's a possibility, but I've worked very hard to not have to deal with employees. And at this rate, my goal is still to keep it that way. I don't want employees, and I'd rather have less work, me be doing all the things that need to be done, not be worrying about training my competitor possibly or dealing with that. And not that would even be an issue here, because one of the recent things that happened here, and just to give you guys a little bit of an update, was my one, I guess I would call him competition, but I never really looked at him that way because I would send work to him. And I don't know that he ever sent work to me, but there was things that he did that I didn't, and I would send work his way. My main competitor, I guess we can call him a competitor, just retired, and he's done. Sent me a message, said, "Hey, I'm referring everybody to you. I'm not sharpening anymore." And he didn't say what happened. He didn't say why. I don't know if he's just moved on to other things, and he's done other things before too. He was doing knife work long before me. Has a lot of years of experience. Maybe he was just done, which happens when I first got into this, and where I got a big majority of my customers, Old Town Alexandria, which is 5 minutes from me and very heavily populated. A sharpener that lived there retired, and I got all of those customers. So what's my point? My point is time management is hugely critical when you are a sole proprietor, or even if you're a small business and do decide to take on a few employees. Now, let's talk a little bit about the younger guys. My one buddy that I've mentioned before, Vinny, who I helped get started in his business, I had a conversation not too long ago with him, and I think he definitely picked up on it, which is really cool. And I'm happy to see him doing this. And the one thing I stressed to him was, Vinny, our situations are very different. And he was like, he was doing some of the YouTube stuff too. He decided to do that. And I've had a lot of people that, hey, Paul, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. and they literally want to mimic almost exactly what I'm doing at times. And I'll tell you this, the YouTube stuff is fun. It's extremely time consuming. If you're not great at editing and technology and that kind of stuff, you might find it extremely frustrating. And as far as money goes, like, do I make money off of the YouTube stuff? Yes, I do. Is it a lot of money? No, it is not. It's not nothing, but it's also, I am not, Mr. Beast. I am not making, six figures or anything even close to it. It's small amounts of money that come in. Hey, it definitely can cover things like website fees and software and different things that I get for the shop. It is helpful at offsetting costs of things that I will review, especially if they're things that I've purchased myself. But just know, like, if I was a younger guy building my business and my YouTube focus, my focus would be more for exposure for my local market than it would be like national exposure, unless I wanted to be doing a bunch of mail order sharpening, which I do. But guys, I'm going to tell you, like, it's another one of those things like that I hate because it's time consuming. So shipping, taking time to pack stuff, ship stuff, that's all time consuming things away from sharpening. So you have to analyze all these little aspects when you're a sole proprietor. If you're going to do a YouTube channel, what's your goal? Is your goal to make a ton of money from doing it? I can tell you, there's not a ton of money there. How do I put this properly? There are people that make tons and tons of money on social media, but when you're in a niche market, kind of like teaching sharpening, it's not the same thing. It's, you're never going to have, and if you do, it's pretty amazing. You're probably never going to have 1 million followers. You're not going to be a Sean Ryan of sharpening, because if you look at sharpening in general and knife stuff and niche areas on YouTube, they're small. 100,000 followers would be incredible for a niche market, at least in my opinion, from what I see. Now, if you're doing that, something that appeals to everyone, or it's entertaining, like you guys often hear me talk about the podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff that I listen to for entertainment, they have huge followings. And yeah, can they make a lot more money? They absolutely can. But they're also, the guys that I really enjoy, these guys have production. Most of them have people helping them and are also having to support a team of people to be able to produce the stuff they're doing. So if you're small and you're running a small business and you're going to do some of the YouTube things too, just know the return on that investment may not be what you expect it to be. I do it more because I love it, and I've always loved photography. I do love the interaction. It gives me the ability to interact with a lot of the sharpeners out there. I love being able to help people get their businesses started. Don't go into thinking you're going to make a ton of money on YouTube. If you do, I think you're going to be, you'll probably be disappointed. All right. And if you're on the younger scale, I would really focus on like local market. I would be using it to get more clients. I would be using it to let local businesses know that I'm out there. So I wouldn't be doing, sharpening videos for the whole nation. I would be doing sharpening stuff and content geared towards Alexandria, Virginia, and very, very local stuff. And, and I would probably be even focused more on different platforms like Instagram and these things where would be trying to get my business noticed by other businesses that might use me. Hope that makes sense. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that for a second, because our crowd does go from like the 30s up into late 70s and even older. And I get emails every day. I had 5 just yesterday from people asking for all kinds of stuff. I get all kinds of requests, guys. I had a guy sent me a really nice letter. He was older. He wanted to get into sharpening, and he wanted me to send him my old belts so that he could practice with them. And I had to tell him, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want you to learn on old belts. I'd rather you buy if you can only afford a couple, buy a couple good quality sharpening belts and learn with those. You're not going to learn anything sharpening on my beat up belts that I'm getting ready to toss in the trash. But I love doing that kind of help. I like help, when people have an idea or they're like, hey, I want to do this. I like trying to make things affordable for you guys. I like being able to make pathways for people to get into this business and other businesses. As you guys have seen, the laser engraving has expanded incredibly. In fact, today I have 3 laser engraving jobs to get to. I have another one coming in. I'm going to be doing my first katana engraving for a wedding. So somebody wants to get a katana engraved with the couple's name on it. I'm doing a very nice knife, Japanese knife, which I'll show you here in a minute. And we're going to get into a new topic here in a second about Japanese knives. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story and how this all came about. And in fact, let's go and do that right now. So let's jump into knives and one of the new changes for 2026 that I'm going to be doing in my shop. For 2026, I decided that I'm going to have a small supply of some high quality knives in my shop. And I want to give you a little bit of the story of how this came about. I never really wanted 100% to, I've been getting asked since I started this, to sell knives. And I've thought about it, and I never wanted a storefront. I didn't want to be a brick and mortar. I thought about, I could have it, a website kind of stuff, but do I want to have to deal with the inventory and that kind of thing? So it's been one of those things. It's always been on the back burner, but I was like, how do I want to approach this? Now, when I got into the laser engraving, then my thoughts changed a little bit where it was like, you know what, having an inventory of a couple nice things that could be engraved from people who have something or need something quickly might be nice. So I started warming up a little bit to, okay, maybe I'll bring in a few things. I don't need to have a giant shop. I don't need to have showcases, but it would be nice to maybe show like, hey, these few things are available. And what happened this year, it was pretty interesting because I'm going to bring up Vinny again, because pretty much some of the conversations I had with Vinny about, hey, here are things I'd be doing differently if I was you. If I was a younger guy, like I would probably sell more products. I would consider, if I got crazy busy, maybe bringing on someone to train. I would look into other things like no compete clauses. I would look into, what's the best way to utilize this person? And would it be better to just have them be a pickup and delivery person for knives, and I still do all the sharpening? When you train somebody to do a skill, you have to, keep those things in mind. But what happened was I was contacted by a company that said, we've seen your stuff, we've seen your channel, and we wanted to know if you'd be interested in selling our Japanese chef's knives. I've always had a love for Japan. I became interested in that culture very young, and I think it started all the way back when I remember when my parents watched Shogun, the original Shogun, and I was a little kid, but they let me stay up and watch it because I was really completely intrigued with Japan and samurai swords and that whole thing. And then later on in life, when I was in high school, I decided to join the service. I went in the Navy, and my first duty station was Yokosuka, Japan. I lived there for 2 years. And I loved Japan. I had a great time in Japan. I was completely blown away with their cutlery, with sushi, with samurai swords, and just the whole thing and the whole culture. So it's an amazing place. And I came back with a huge appreciation for Japanese knife making. And I've been asked many times by Chinese companies to feature their knives, sell their knives. Nothing against China, but honestly, I didn't want anything to do with it. Like, I love really high quality knives, and high quality knife making is associated with certain regions in the world. It's just something that, it's kind of always been that way. So if you look at certain places and certain knives, you'll see like, oh, Solinger, Germany, or Seki, Japan, certain areas of France where Sabatier knives came from. And there's usually reasons behind why great knives came from certain areas. And a lot of it had to do with the things available in those areas. And that's where a lot of knife making kind of comes from, because, hey, maybe they have access to great steel, coal, water, and it's part of that culture. And that's where great knives come from. One of my first and most favorite knives that I ever had was a Spyderco knife. And one of the things I had always noticed on my Spyderco knife was that it came from Seki, Japan. In fact, it's a great story, and I'm going to link it in this podcast so you guys can see it. The story of how Spyderco started. It was a local couple literally driving around in a van selling different things, but he had an idea for a knife, and they had that knife manufactured in Seki City, Japan. And it became hugely popular, and that is the company that we now know today as Spyderco. And I'll show you a video that I'll link that you can watch if you want to see the whole history. It's very cool. And they're all over now. They're, very heavy in Colorado, because that's where the couple ended up settling, I guess, when they were younger, and built the empire that they have today, which is Spyderco knives, which are my absolute favorite EDCs. But one thing I got to do when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, is I got to visit Seki City, Japan, which is really known for samurai sword making. And now in more modern times, they're known for absolutely incredible knife making and chef's knife and mostly kitchen cutlery. But even Spyderco still has knives made there. It's one of their locations. So it's one of the preeminent areas of the world, and people that know Japanese knives. And there's some other areas of Japan, but that is, I think, in my opinion, probably the most famous. So if you see a knife from Seki City or Seki, Japan, I don't know that there's any bad knives from there, because I don't know that you could make it there. It's got such a fantastic reputation that I don't know that you would be able to survive there if you weren't a really high quality, great knife maker. The first thing that caught my eye when this company reached out to me and wanted me to sell their knives was that they were Japanese knives made in Japan, handmade in Japan, and immediately caught my attention. They were from Seki. And having had been there, now granted, I was there 30 some years ago. It's changed, I'm sure, a lot since I was there, but it's still known for just the greatest knives in the world. It's what they are known for. So it had my attention right off the bat. I started looking into the company, and I found out that this company that approached me was a new company, a very young company. So, I mean, you can go to Seki and find knife companies that have been around for a really long time. But it was really cool to see, like, hey, this is a small business, and I love supporting small businesses. And I went and researched them, and I saw a video, and I'll link that too. And the one thing that I loved was that the knife making culture in Japan is predominantly almost like my audience. It's a lot of older folks. It's, 60s, 70s, and into their 80s that are, these master knife makers. The owner of this company is a younger guy, the younger CEO, and he's trying to make sure that Japanese knife making isn't a lost art, and he wants to get younger people trained in that craft, so that doesn't leave Japan and end up in China, and that they pass this art form onto younger people, which I like immediately resonated with. And having been to Seki, I was like, I'm I'm on board. If the knives are nice, I'm on board. Like, I can support this. I don't need 9 million knives in my shop, but I would love to help support a small company. I would love to sell knives for a small company that is producing high quality knives. And that's how I found the company I'm going to talk to you about now, which is Tasky. So it's Taski. They're very small, but they're producing some absolutely beautiful, very nice quality Japanese chef's knives. They have like two tiers. They have like kind of a general knife, and then they have their premium knives. Price range wise, they're fantastic. Their premium knives top out right around $225, and they're like general, regular, kind of like a Gyoto knife, which is your normal chef's knife, or a petty knife, which you would get in Japan, is right around $130, $150 range, which is great. Like, you can get really great quality Japanese knives in Japan for $150. There's another trend I've noticed, which is interesting too. And one of the laser engraving jobs falls right into this category. And I'll even grab it and show you. I have noticed the trend since I started sharpening, which was in 2019. And I started on YouTube in 2021. I noticed a trend that younger people are buying different knives than my generation did, and definitely my parents' generation. And what I am seeing now a lot of is that young people, and I don't know if it's because of all the exposure to all these, we have so many great cooking shows and cooking channels and things. When I was growing up, we didn't have all that. Julia Child and we didn't have the great cooking stuff now until my age now. My wife loves Food Network. She watches all those shows all the time. But when we grew up, those things really didn't exist, like not to the level that we have today. There are so many, amazing cooking shows. And I think younger kids are getting exposed to, like, there's really high quality knives out there and really high quality chefs out there. And when you see these chefs on, Chopped or Beat Bobby Flay or something, and you see what they're using, many of them are using really high quality Japanese chef's knives. The days of like people coming in with huge Wusthof and Henkel sets, it still happens, but I'm not seeing it very much in my younger generation. And when I say younger, I'm talking like people in their later, early 20s, mid 20s, and early 30s that are getting married or have been married for a few years and are bringing their knives in for the first time to be sharpened. I'm seeing a lot of people that come in, and instead of having that big 16 knife set, they come in with a really nice Japanese chef's knife, a nice Nikiri, a nice petty knife, maybe, 3, 4, 5, sometimes at the most. And that's it. That's their knives. That's what instead of getting this big German knife set, they get a couple really high quality Japanese knives. And it's a trend I've seen. And I wonder how many others out there have seen that, but I've seen it enough that I have no problem saying that's a trend. And let me show you something interesting. I had a laser engraving job come in. It's a wedding gift for somebody. I'm going to grab it. I'll be back here in 1 second. So this is a laser engraving job that just came in. And the customer that dropped it off, I opened it up, I looked at it, and a couple things jumped out to me besides the fact that it's a beautiful Japanese knife. So his buddy wanted a chef's knife as a wedding gift. Now, I've seen these. I've done many of these as groomsmen gifts before too. It's a very popular groomsman gift to get engraved, but I've done them also for wedding gifts. The very first thing I noticed is that JKC is from Seki City, Japan. Another knife out of Seki. I mean, just high quality stuff. His buddy was like, hey, I want a chef's knife, for the kitchen. He thought he wanted a German one. And his buddy said to him, you don't want a German one. I'm going to get you a really nice Japanese chef's knife. You'll be blown away. We're not going to get you, I'm not getting you a commercial knife. I'm going to get you something that you're going to be blown away and impressed with. So we'll be engraving this beautiful knife, but it just falls into what I have been seeing going on that I love, which I think is just awesome. I love that a younger generation that's interested in cooking, that's interested in knives, are not just assuming like, oh, I have to go out and get a Henkel set because that's what my parents had, or a Wusthof set, which are fantastic knives. Don't get me wrong. I love my German knives, but I love the fact that they're out there and they're going a little deeper. And if they really like cooking, that some of them are out there going, you know what? I'm going to go get me a really high quality Japanese chef's knife. So that's what's going on. And I ordered knives from Tasky. I have about 15 of them that I got in the shop. Absolutely beautiful chef's knives. In fact, let me grab those and I'll show you them too. You know what? I'll just put it into the podcast. I'll put them up on the screen for those that want to see them. Totally thrilled with them. They're beautiful, just like that knife that I just showed you, which wasn't a Tasky, but it's also from Seki City, Japan, and just a fantastic high quality Japanese knife. One thing that was interesting, and I wanted to bring this up. So Vinny has been doing, these other things, and some of them that I recommended. He's been going and he goes to restaurants and he will sharpen their knives on location, which I think is great, because if I was young and my biggest concern was making as much money as possible, maybe having a much bigger sharpening business than I have, I would be doing those kind of things. He actually got into having some knives and doing knife sales before I did, which is interesting because it's pretty much been Vinny following me, but this time around it was me following Vinny. So I had to laugh when I was kind of vetting Tasky knives. They said, they looked at all my stuff. They looked at my sharpening, and they came back to me and they said, would you like to be our recommended East Coast sharpener? I don't need the mail order business, but I never mind sharpening Japanese knives. I absolutely love them. I will sharpen Japanese knives all day long. So when they asked, I said, yeah, probably. I'd probably be interested in that. And they were like, well, let me send you what we did for our other person. We have someone on the West Coast. We're going to send you our East Coast person, or we would like you to be our East Coast person. We're going to send you our West Coast person's profile on our website. We'll build one for you if you like it. We are looking for, skilled sharpeners that can work on our knives, and do these things. And they send me the person's profile and it's Vinny. and I was like, oh, that's great. So I wrote him back and I said, here's something interesting. I said, Vinny and I are pretty good friends. I said, he calls me his mentor because I helped him get started and helped train him some. And I said, I'm thrilled to be part of this and actually have Vinny and I as their first two recommended sharpeners in America. So I thought that was really cool. And I had to laugh, and I reached out to Vinny and, I was telling him a little bit of my story, and because not everybody knows about my time I spent in Japan and why that particular knife kind of jumped out to me now. And Vinny's been doing some cool stuff. One thing, Vinny's worked with a local knife maker, so he's carrying knives for a local knife maker, which is great. And I have a local knife maker that I work with somewhat too. My guy's a little more specialized. He really does more knives for like retirements. And I've talked about him before. Jeff Moore, fantastic knife maker. I have referred people to Jeff, but Vinny, I think is doing even more. Like he's got an actual guy that's really producing a bunch, probably a lot more knives than Jeff produces, and I love seeing that. I love seeing him like take the ball and run with it and be really successful. So it's nice to see, and he's not the only one. Not the only guy out there. Like yeah, we also have Warren's out there, right? In Carson City, Nevada. Warren actually just picked up a laser this year, so I think he's gonna start doing laser engraving. And one of these days, maybe I'll convince Vinny to get into doing the laser engraving too. Was he one of the other reasons I liked Toski Knives too, because they actually do laser engraving. So if you go look at their actual website, if you buy direct from them, they do offer laser engraving. And I wanted a knife that was going to be great for laser engraving. So it was one of the reasons I looked into it. If you guys are at that point, or you are interested in selling knives and you're interested in Toski, let me know, reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll be happy to put you in contact with my contact there, who can set you up and get you, knives and everything. And the other thing which was great was they didn't have a ridiculously huge order amount. They had no problem. Like I told you, I ordered 15 knives to get started. I could have done a lot more, but I wanted to kind of creep into knife sales. I didn't want to dive into the deep end of the pool. But if you are interested, or, especially if you guys are doing, if you're doing like farmers markets and things like that, it's probably a really great way for you guys to make some additional money, because a real good knife sale, the profit margins are pretty good on this stuff. So what might take you a while to sharpen, you can make in a knife sale like really quick. So it's not a bad thing to look at, as long as it fits for what you're doing. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I can hook you up with the connection there. Very cool, a lot of fun stuff going on there, and so I figured I'd share that with you. I thought that was interesting. And we, it's that kind of a community too, so Sharpening is a small community. We get approached, as you can see, by the same people. We get approached by the same businesses. We get, especially if you have a YouTube following, and that's, Vinny does have a pretty decent YouTube following, and that's going to attract people. So, just know that too. You will get offers and things. And honestly, I turned 90% of them down. There's so many things that I turned down, even, lasers and sharpening gear and things like that. It's got to fit my audience. It's got to fit the business. There are opportunities out there. And as you can see, there's lots of ways to go about it. And even someone that I helped, you can see Vinny is often running on his own, man. He don't need, I occasionally get a question from Vinny, but not compared to like the first year or two when he started out, and it was lots and lots of questions. Vinny's on his own, man. Vinny is running and he's doing his thing, and you can get to that point too. And it's important to do your own thing. Don't be afraid. It's great to mimic what other people do to a certain extent, but learn your area, know what's going to work for you. Or if you have an idea of something that may work for you or work better in your area, go with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have a person I've been talking to lately who's local here, who wants to get into sharpening, and he wants to do mobile sharpening. And he was asking me, what do I think there's a need for? I said, it's not even something I have a big interest in. I do some of it. But I said, doing scissors for groomers and salons, if you're willing to travel, I know it's wide open over here. I got one buddy, Matt, on the other side of the Potomac over there. And Matt just started doing mobile. And from what I'm seeing, it looks like he's super busy. He worked for the government. And he left his government job. I think he unfortunately got kind of force reduced, and and then decided to go full bore with the sharpening. And he's got, the van now and everything. He started out like I did. He was working out of his house. And every time I see his updates and stuff on the Guild of Professional Sharpeners, it looks like Matt's really busy, which I'm happy for him. I think that's great. If that's what you love, find your niche. Don't be afraid to run after it. And don't be afraid at some point. It's great to follow what someone's doing, but be prepared that you might have to change. You might have to tweak it. Maybe you find an area you're really good at. Maybe you want to do scissor sharpening and that kind of stuff, and focus on a niche area and exploit that if that's needed in your area. I have seen people do really well with that, and if you like to travel, and I've also seen people that built sharpening mobile units that they could travel with and travel the country to just enjoy like seeing places and have that as a source of income, just, going from market to market to market and set up and sharpen. And, and they got a rig set up that they can take with them. So there's so many cool things that you can do with sharpening. And so that's it. So I'm going to carry some Toski knives. I'm going to be their recommended East Coast sharpener. So that's interesting. We have some cool reviews coming up. I have one for Buck Tool that's going to be released really soon. Some very cool 3D printing things that are going on currently that you guys have probably got a little glimpse of some of the things going on there. And I think we'll probably end it here. I still have a bunch of things to get to, but I'm going to save them so that this doesn't run too long. So I'll edit this down and I'll save some of these other topics for some more podcast style stuff. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to stop now and get on with the rest of my day. Cause like I said, got a bunch of laser engraving to do. I mentioned the other day, I was caught up I had one day I had no sharpening to do. But yesterday I had 3 people drop off when we're supposed to get more snow starting tonight. We'll see what happens, but the roads are clear enough and customers started coming back, and I have like 4 sharpening jobs to do today also. But I did have that just surprising break. It is the first time in years that I had nothing in the shop that needed to be sharpened. And it was kind of a welcome break, but we're back at it, and I got to get to work. So I'm going to end this so I can get it edited and get it chopped down to a size that's not too much rambling, but gets the kind of point across. Let me know what's going on with you guys. Put it in the comments. Hope you're enjoying your sharpening journeys, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Stay safe, everybody.